my god, it's friends living well.
We're just girls. We're just fucking girls. And I've never claimed to be anything but a stupid girl. We're just girls.
Years. We're live.
We're live and alive.
We're live and alive. Welcome, everybody, to Friends Living Well.
Episode 32. We're doing it. Welcome back.
Episode 32. I'm Kelsey. I got
Nikita Mahone. I'm an LPC, licensed professional counselor, and the co-founder of Full Living Wellness, which is how we came up with this podcast, Friends Living Well.
Yeah. We both work for Full Living Wellness. Nikita's the co-founder, owner. And we provide therapy in a lot of different places, in a lot of different things. So we provide therapy in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Texas, and Florida, I think.
California,
not Texas. I don't know where I got Texas from.
You want that heat, that Texas fun and heat.
I want the heat. And we do therapy in a lot of different modalities.
Yeah. Individual, couples, family, group therapy, BCBA, parenting coaching. A big one that we're going to be talking about today is supervision and how you are focusing more on that. I mean, it's always been a huge passion of yours and something that you and I talk a lot about, but I know that right now at Full Living Wellness, it's something you're focusing more on. So we wanted to spend some time today, just kind of like talk about what that is for you.
Talk about supervision. And I'm glad that you brought that up as a topic, because I do feel like it's such a hot topic right now.
Really?
Because so it's really interesting. The BCBAs that I work with at CHOP, we have like a group chat, and very often we're posting screenshots from BCBA supervision groups where people are asking questions, Facebook groups.
Love the drama of a Facebook group. They're so juicy.
Love the juicy drama, and so much of it is like people talking about how they have had to try and pass the BCBA exam like more than 5 times, or they ask questions that are just concerning, that like.
So this isn't just like test anxiety. Like, I'm a big supporter. I feel like some girlies, they just can't, you put them in that setting where they feel like a little guinea pig under the lights, and they're just having a panic attack. And it's like, but you're a great therapist. You do great work. You know your stuff. You just aren't good at taking tests. But this sounds like incompetency.
Yes, that's what's so worrisome about it, because for example, one of the posts we just talked about was somebody saying that they took it, I think 4 or 5 times, and they put in their post that they think that the exam is rigged, and that there was content in there that goes far beyond ABA. So I was like,
that's worrisome, because the stuff that's usually in there is what is a circle? Match the it's very basic stuff. It's not, and it's not even stuff that you necessarily, that's the thing that kind of, I always say is the hardest about that testing. It's not even necessarily what you would answer. It's what the board would answer. So you just memorize their wording, and
1,000%. That is a lot of the conversations I have when I'm doing supervision is here's going to be your practitioner answer. Here is going to be the BACB's answer that they're looking for. And you have to be able to I feel like you have to do that as a clinician, period. Not even in an exam scenario.
Or different hat.
You have to put the hat on. It's am I doing behavior science? Am I behavior scientist where I'm being rigid and this is the scientific approach, or am I being practitioner that's taking environment and context and blending? You know what I mean? That. I do that a lot. I've been having a lot of those conversations with parents lately where I'm behavior scientist me would tell you to do this thing, but person me would be that's really hard to do for all of these reasons.
I love that. And I think that people we work with value what you're doing so much in terms of thinking out loud. Instead of just saying the thing, you're literally saying, I'm thinking this. There could be this one direction we could go, but then there's this other one. And for right now, there's something about this that I'm sitting with.
Yeah, I think that's, I don't know. What would you call that? I feel like I would call that humility.
Yeah, I think transparency. I think of it as the relational approach, where I'm not trying to be an authority figure where I know something. We are trying to collaboratively figure this out together, which is why I want you to know. And also I feel it's very uncomfortable at times to be in the seat of in therapy or receiving the services. So I think Humility, that is a good word for it, where we're just like, I'm just figuring it out with you. I'm not approaching you because I know and I think this is absolutely the answer. There's probably a number of answers. Let's talk it through. What do you think of this?
Literally, like that was the call I just got off of because we were talking about presentations of OCD and in an autistic teenager, and like I literally used, I would thought out loud with them. I said, like, this is what I'm thinking. Am I mischaracterizing this? Like, does this feel like crazy?
Checking in. How does it? Yeah, gut check.
Yeah, because I think I think the presentation of anxiety for autistic people is really confusing for parents and caregivers to figure out because we know that repetitive and restrictive behaviors are a part of that diagnosis. Like, we know that that's how autistic people interact in the world. Does it mean there's something wrong?
Oh, we should do I kind of want to do an episode on that where I throw like a diagnosis at you and I'm like, from a spectrum perspective,
Yeah.
how might this look or how might this apply?
Yeah.
Really,
That would be
interesting.
That would be fun. So maybe we need to like table that as like what does anxiety presentations maybe look like with neurodivergence,
Yes. And all of these-
especially with like higher support needs people.
I was just
because I think,
nonverbal in that way.
yeah, or like minimally verbal in an expressive capacity,
Yeah.
right? So like we might have really strong receptive language and like have a huge vocabulary that's just like hard for us to access. Like how do I interpret and how do I give you support?
That's so hard for anybody to do, especially in the midst of feeling. I literally just said that. I think I posted about it just the other day where I was like, I'm very emotionally self-aware. Like I have a high EQ, but that does not mean that as I'm feeling something all the time, I'm accurately able to identify or use it or know what I want to do with it. I'm just able to name things about it.
Yeah, humility. I don't have all the answers and I don't know, and that's okay. And we're just all babies in the world figuring it out.
Amen, sister, which is girl.
Amen. But anyway, back to supervision.
Back to the topic of the day.
It's a hot topic because there's so many things I can say about this. Like, I feel like there's a soapbox that I really want to get on about this because I think that it ties into like the trajectory of science and how as we grow as a field, there's like these natural ebbs and flows of like progress and regression because we're in a period right now where the BACB is changing their supervision requirements.
Okay.
And one of the really big shifts that's just happened with supervision is that we can no longer do role play of we can no longer review or do mock activities if they are not related to the clients that your supervisee is directly working with.
So like case consultation based, you can use that tool to model something, but if it's just for the sake of like maybe you want to show a theory or a modality and then you want to model that through or I guess technically you can't count it as supervision hours that you can sign off on technically.
Technically, yes.
Oy.
Which to me, and I think that again, it's like you swing the pendulum one way and then you want to bring it all the way back, right? So I think that the BACB is noticing, rightfully so, that there's a concern about, are we providing supervision and consultation that is directly related to client contact?
Okay.
And how much of that are you getting? Like, because with how their standards are set up, you could hypothetically reach your restricted hour requirement, which restricted means direct client contact, like that. Like you only need
probably clarify that even. Direct is like face to face you're working with or doing something with the client.
And you only need a certain number of hours to do that restricted direct face-to-face work. A majority of the supervision that you have to get is unrestricted, which means like assessments, treatment planning, like research, like all these things that can take up a majority. That's supposed to take up a majority, but I think that the BACB is a bit worried about like
How
how much of that are you getting that's related to the work that you're doing? Like, are you using this with the clients? Like, I think there's a question here of
Quality and making sure, which is being met with a little bit of control. Do you think that this is all coming from, obviously I'm outside of exactly but I feel like my perspective has seen more attention be brought to the field and definitely more criticism and labeling of like, this can be a very abusive approach. Is that maybe why the board is responding in this way and wanting to make sure people get trained?
think it's not, I don't think that that's directly related. I think that that definitely informs what more on a practitioner level, how we're intervening. I think from more of a systemic level, they're noticing there's a couple things that are happening. One, the pass rates for the exam are like abysmal right now. So the pass rates are bad. And I think that there's a big criticism from myself of quality of the analyst. Like, where did you get supervision? Where did you get training? Like why are there so many practitioners in the field that think that ABA is ABA for autism? Like, why do so many practitioners not realize that it's behavior analysis and that it's a science of behavior that can be applied in so many different areas?
Okay, so which I guess kind of makes sense because what I was talking about is more like opinion, the vibe of but what you're talking about is quantifiable. Here are scores. The score ratings are going down, must respond.
Yes. Yes, because like I remember when I was in grad school, like when I was seeking out grad schools, we were looking for universities that had really high pass rates, and I was looking at universities that were like 99%, 90%, 89%, right? And so many universities are much, much lower. And so I think that that's one of my major criticisms of supervision as it currently stands is when I first was in grad school, we didn't have virtual asynchronous program offerings by universities. Like that wasn't a thing yet.
For the convenience of it and to go back to information.
Right, because it was pre-COVID, right? We were intervening as therapists really differently at that time. But like you couldn't find a program that was doing asynchronous offerings or virtual offerings. It was pretty much all in person. And most of the supervision that was being provided was provided in-house by the university. So we're talking like doctorate level BCBAs were training student analysts in practicums that were well established through a university setting.
Okay.
Which means that the quality of supervision and training is going to be very different, whereas now asynchronous offerings are very rampant, virtual offerings are rampant, and you're not getting supervision in your master's program. You're getting your master's, and then you're going to have to go find your own supervisor.
Is this post-graduation?
It could be during, it could be after. So I've worked with like people that did not accrue any supervision hours during their master's program.
Okay, so they don't have to do, like in therapy, we have to do practicum and internship like at differing lengths. Is that not necessarily the case, or is it that they could have gone but didn't necessarily count towards supervision hours?
It wouldn't necessarily it doesn't always count towards supervision hours, but a lot of the time, if they're offering something, you have to find your own practicum. Like you have to find it as the student. And so a lot of the times what's happening is like, where do I get supervision? Well, what's rampant right now? Private equity backed ABA agencies that really only work with autistic people and that value high caseloads. And, like it's not supervision focused. So people are going out there and they're trying to find supervision and they're trying to get their hours, and they might be getting it in a place that's very siloed into just ABA with autism, just early intervention. It might be from like a very new BCBA who maybe didn't get great supervision themselves.
Yeah.
So there's kind of this thing that I'm noticing that, and it's not to say that all asynchronous programs or virtual programs are poor or you can't get good supervision through those programs. But I think that it's with accrediting a lot of programs nationally, it's made it really difficult for student analysts to find good quality training and supervision.
As I'm sitting here, I'm trying to, because what you're talking about is something that like just is the expectation in the going to counseling school. Like you're kind of like warned against, and I don't know if it's gotten better or actually necessarily worse in that way, where it's like you're kind of thrown to the wolves. You're very lucky if your university even gives you a very outdated list of contacts that they have. Other universities try really, really hard. Like I know St. Joe's tries really, really hard to match and like network to, but otherwise you're just thrown to the wolves. And then that creates a very difficult work experience, because essentially what you're asking somebody to do is a professional, maybe operating their own practice under their own licensure. And you're saying, I, as a student who you don't even know probably, would like you to take me under your wing and the liability of your licensure so I can learn under you.
Also, I might want it for free.
For free. And then we get abused where it's like, I'm working for free. Maybe you're asking a lot of me. Maybe you're putting me in situations I should not yet be in.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe all of these, and I'm not getting necessarily the super. So I feel like that is the most common thing I've heard in the therapy experience is we will find a way to get our hours, but it's typically not in the work that we want to do. It's not allowing us to focus on the modalities that we're passionate about.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we're not paid during that time. It's not great working. And then you have to work really, really hard to find other resources and professionals that you can connect with so you can start learning those things.
Yeah. And I think that sounds like that's kind of maybe innate to your field. And I think that maybe one of the differences in that, maybe why it's something that the BACB is focusing on, or something that I'm noticing, is that with behavioral therapy, you're working with a marginalized group that you could be doing harm to because you're working on significant like safety and life skills. So it's not to say that that's not being worked on in counseling. That absolutely is. But I think that there's a fragility of what we're doing and how harmful it can be, because we're doing intervention that like is focused on compliance. And
as you say that, I feel like that is the main facet, because a lot of, especially when starting therapy, like you were like, I'm just going to listen and reframe. I'm just going to like give you an open-ended question. Like that is the focus. But as you're saying, so much of yours is about changing a behavior, making change, implementing, having an impact on, versus many new therapists are like, I just want to give you the freedom and the space to talk and explore without me having too much of an impact.
Right. I think a lot more harm can be done. And that's why it's so criticized, right? Because if we are getting supervision and training, and we're getting supervision and training from a supervisor that has only worked in one setting with one population of individuals, our information and our training is going to be quite narrow, right? And the BACB in their task list talks about how, like, ideally you would want to get supervision and training in multiple settings with multiple people, so that way you understand broader applications. But I feel like it makes me question, what are we being taught in some of these university programs where people are walking out not understanding that like there's organizational behavior management, that we're doing work with like non-human animals, that we're like doing business intervention like with Kellogg and improving like safety behaviors with employees. Like that's behavior analytic. Like that, to me, the fact that we don't know that there are practitioners running around that don't know that is scary to me.
Well, and I see that a lot is since knowing you, where there's so many aspects of therapy where you'd be like, oh yeah, there's this whole behavioral aspect of it. And you'll point that out in a way that I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. And I never thought about it through that lens or just focused on that one piece of it. But it comes into so many different modalities. And I can see if somebody's so focused on just one look or one way that role plays out, you're missing the whole show.
You're missing the whole show. And then I think that it then breeds like population, a generation of behavior analysts that are not understanding from a macro level what behavior analytic interventions look like and how they can be supportive. And I think that that's what makes me a good supervisor, is that I've worked in enough settings that I can more broadly apply behavior analytic interventions across multiple behaviors, across multiple populations, because I think I conceptually understand behavior analysis in a way that some people don't.
You have enough
Because they
experience there to pull from and the patterns, and you actually know what works. I feel like that's another big thing that's really different between school and supervision and then your own practice, is you figuring out what actually works for the people that I tend to work with.
Yeah. And I think that that just comes, I think, with time and learning and all of that. So, I do think, and I don't want to make any blanket statements about supervision or student analysts. I think that there are tons of BCBAs out there that are new green BCBAs that are probably giving good supervision, right? But I think that when you're on the Facebook groups and when when I've provided supervision and I've met some people recently that, maybe I supervised or I was thinking about supervising, my understanding of their conceptual understanding, I was like, I'm worried.
It's almost like delayed. And
I had a supervisee tell me that they thought their master's degree was easy.
is that like a genuine, or was it just like a big ego moment? Like,
It felt more like I didn't really have to study. It was asynchronous. Like, the vibe that I was getting was like it was very easy for me to submit tasks and not conceptually engage with the material.
that is so worrisome, because you can't teach that. That comes with the passion of being a healer, a therapist, a counselor, whatever you want to. You
Yeah.
have to pursue that of all different kinds.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah, and I don't want to generalize. Like, that person was somebody that I was like, why do you want to do this? Right? That exists in all fields.
Absolutely.
But
I get it.
there's
Without realizing what it is, why they're doing it.
But I think BCBAs that have been in the field for 10 years or more are looking around at, student analysts and like the climate on the internet and being like, what the heck is going on here? Which is why I take supervision so seriously. I feel like I'm a very flexible person and I like to adapt my approach, but I think with supervision, that's an area I can be a little more rigid
Yeah.
in, because I take it so seriously.
What do you mean when you say you're a little more rigid?
I think I have very high expectations
Okay.
for my supervisee, and like I have a very high expectation of like level of engagement and like level of activity.
Like, kind of their integrity and how they go after it. And
Yeah. And conceptual understanding. Like, I feel like I'm a stickler for conceptual understanding, and I really like I will make you talk a thing out loud until it makes sense.
so you can explain it to you.
Until you can explain it to me, like, I'm gonna make you keep doing it.
Like the classic. If you can't explain it, then you don't really understand it yourself yet. So then slow down. Let's break this down a little more.
Yeah, and like I'm a really big stickler, I think, too, about how you study, and how you engage with concepts and study them, because I believe in using behavior analysis to train yourself and to learn behavior analysis. So when I was in grad school and I was studying, I was teaching myself across what we would call as behavior analysts as operants.
Okay.
I was teaching myself across different types of behaviors like labeling, like writing. So we're engaging in verbal description of the concept. But I'm doing it in multiple ways, right? So I'm verbally saying out loud, this is the concept, after I look at the name of something, but then I'm wanting you to then go read the concept and then label the concept. Like, I want you to do everything across all modalities to increase your understanding of.
You lost me only in that I think you're using those words and definitions and their concepts that I'm not familiar with. I'm almost getting the idea of you're like saying to verbalize versus read something and then to explain the concept and learn.
Yeah. Yeah, so think of it this way. When you're teaching a kid what an apple is, you want them to be able to explain it in multiple concepts. So if I hold up an apple, I would want you to be able to label it, but I would also want you to be able to answer the question, what is it? So I would also want you to be able to point to an apple. Those are all different behaviors we're working on. So like one is I'm asking you what is it and you're labeling it. One is I'm asking you to show me where the apple is. That's receptive language, right? And then maybe I'm asking you to read a description of something and fill in the blank. What's something that's shiny and red and sweet? Could that be an apple?
Yes.
That's what I would want you to be able to do with a behavioral concept.
Makes sense.
Right? So if I'm saying what positive reinforcement is, I would want you to be able to label it. I would want you to be able to receptively identify it. I would want you to be able to fill in the blank with it.
Okay, so you kind of have like a little bit of a structure of how you want them to reply or offer you information for the case or the observation.
Yeah. Yeah, and even in just teaching yourself, right? If you're teaching yourself to label and receptively identify and to fill in the blank and to offer description, you're engaging with this concept across all these different modalities that's really like it really improving your conceptual understanding of like what is an apple or what is positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
And I think that we don't do that a lot. And that's how I taught myself. So this is like, maybe this is my ego. I think that that's the way you should be teaching yourself.
So are those core concepts things that you were taught, or are like we have like supervision approaches that have similar ideas, core concepts that you kind of make sure you hit on or follow in this way? Did you come up with that, or is that
Came up with it. I didn't come up with it, but it's something that I observed with the clients in grad school. I noticed that when we were teaching them concepts in ABA therapy, like what is an apple, what is a cup, I noticed that we were teaching them across all these different operands. Like I was teaching my client to label the cup, to hand me the cup, to, like all these different ways that we were having them engage with the concept. And I was like, well, I should just do that with this.
So nobody labeled that as like an observation system, like a checklist of ways you can approach an observation to make sure you're fully analyzing it?
No, it's just something that I noticed. I was like, well, if and it has a lot to do with relational frame theory, where you're talking about like these loose associations that you have with certain concepts and how they're related to each other. And I think that that's like that's a heavier
answers in there, especially in the gaps of places for people, like if they don't have one or
Yeah. So I think that that's like something that I just noticed. If we're teaching others, if we're teaching little kids how to understand and move throughout the world and understand what things are and what they mean and how to interact with them, that to me, that naturally makes sense to do when we're studying and receiving training.
Okay.
And if I, as a supervisor, can't explain to you the concept in multiple different examples or multiple different modalities, then maybe I don't understand it either.
So it gives you some insight as well. That's one of my favorite things about supervision also, is it helps me to go back to things and just challenge myself in a whole different approach.
Yeah, because sometimes I'll be asked a question and I'm like, crap, I kind of don't really remember that well. I need to brush up on that.
Especially when you get so good at it that you naturally do it, you kind of forget how to break it down. Like you said, you have to be able to explain something. That's how you know you fully understand all the pieces of it.
Yeah, and how do I give you an example that's not autism, right? Like, how do I help you look throughout the world and find these behavior analytic concepts so that way, because that's where it's like we lose people, right? I lost you in my technical explanation, right? If I can't offer you a layman's explanation, then like it kind of doesn't matter.
Right? Yeah, you can't use it.
Yeah, so yeah.
What else can somebody, other than that little like checkpoint system, I feel like you should come up with a name for it, and
I know.
we should like publish it, and
I should call it something.
It makes so much sense to me when you say it. It feels like a counseling supervision approach in that way, and just what a helpful thing for people to know. Don't just go in and expect a conversation. I mean, that's definitely something I get asked a lot, like what should I look for in a supervisor? And I'm like, don't have somebody where it just feels like you go in and you're just having a general conversation. Like there should be some structure there of some kind, something that you have as a goal in mind.
Yes, there shouldn't be a question of what are we going to talk about when we're approaching supervision. I think I experienced that where I would show up to supervision and I felt like they didn't really have a plan. And I was like, well, sometimes I don't even know the questions I need to be asking.
You need guidance in that way. What should we be doing?
Yeah.
I be preparing and thinking about my supervision.
Yeah. And so you should expect from a supervisor that not only should they show up with an agenda or a plan, I would want my supervisee to also have that, right? I would want you to show up saying, I have this question. I want to better understand this concept. This thing happened with my client this week that I don't think went well. Like, we would want to have some level of structure. And then I think you should also close supervision with a plan of action of like, this is what I'm going to do in this time. This is what you're going to do in this time. So that way, when we come back to supervision, we have content to discuss.
Which is so grounding when you're doing this kind of work that can be vague and so much in the room.
But it is very much driven by the student analyst though, right? Like, they need to be able to sit there and say, like, I don't understand this. I need support here. This is an area I want to improve.
So you're leading me to something that I see also a lot with individuals. And I'm curious about what this is like for you, just because I think it's the main reason I see people seek me out for supervision is they might be getting great supervision or just supervision, like maybe just their hours, or they can go to somebody and ask like if they have a crisis question or an admin question, or maybe one particular modality of something or one kind of a client. But the thing I have people come to me for with supervision is figuring out their of insecurities, how their fears come into play, how communication and conflict and relational skills can become an issue within that working relationship. And so I'm so curious, especially just knowing you and having a little insight. I would imagine you offer so much of that of like, what does that mean to you? You know, like, why didn't you, like, I can tell you know that theory. I can tell you know what to do. Why didn't you do it? And it's always something like, I doubted myself or I was afraid or like, and then that
I love
the supervision. Like, let's talk about that. So next time it comes up, you better understand yourself and then know how you want to respond with it.
I love your brain. I love you. I just love you so much. That's such a good question because that is not something that I ever received during supervision. That is not something that we're taught as supervisors. To give you also a little bit of background on supervision from the BACB and like standards, we did not even have supervision standards for BCBAs until 2014.
Shut the front door.
So
I was a full-fledged adult when that was happening. I was like my 21st birthday. I was a...
And you attended my talk about the history of ABA. So you know that the BACB wasn't developed until 1990.
Which also blew my mind. I was like, how?
Which also blows your mind, right? Because they were doing crazy shit in the 60s and the 70s,
They were having
right?
a good, unregulated time. I'll tell you what.
Fuck those behavior modifiers. And I will die on that hill. God, they're the worst. No, we didn't have So from the 90s to 2014, there was not supervision standards outlined.
No monitoring.
No monitoring, no expectations, nothing, right? So again, like, we're a very new field. So that the relational piece that you are describing is not something that I was trained to do necessarily. I think that because I was taught well and how I was taught was based on relational frame theory and behavior analytic intervention, I derived concepts without direct teaching. Those concepts include understanding that when somebody is struggling with a concept or an idea or applying an intervention, that it has to do with their own thoughts and feelings and their barriers and the environment.
We do be people too.
Right. Yeah. And so I think that does set me apart as a BCBA supervisor because I just had, this is such a great success story. My first supervisee through mind body behavior, they passed the exam on their second try, which is amazing. And they were a person that constantly doubted themselves, that would ask the question or say, like, I don't think I understand this. And then I would say, okay, well, can you explain to me this thing or can you give me an example? And they were able to do it. Or if I asked them questions, they were able to answer them correctly. And I was like, This isn't a lack of understanding or skill. This is like confidence in your own knowledge and abilities.
Yes. And what do we have to do to help get you to that place where it's not stopping you from doing the good work you know to do?
Which is why, again, I think that I take it so seriously, because some of it does really have to do with just like, who are you as a person? Like, what do you need as a person to be a confident clinician? And if you have doubts or you have insecurities, how can you show up and be present with the client, but then also get support where you need it, right? Because especially with the work that we're doing, like second guessing and insecurity can actually cause some pretty significant challenges that could result in harm to the client or yourself, right? I can't have you second guessing whether or not I should block the door because like somebody's going to run into the highway. Right. So the stakes are a little bit different. And I often find that my supervisees actually make incredible split second decisions. But it's when we talk about conceptual understanding and technology that they're like, I'm dumb. I don't know.
And even this
And
goes
I'm
back
like,
to learn. Everybody is different. We all have our strengths, our weaknesses, our personal experiences, and we bring all of that into who we are as a clinician. And a supervisor is just super helpful in helping you identify and understand all of that. In addition to what's a tool, how do I implement that into this case, or what would be best? That's the other part of it. Guidance, making sure you're on the right path, updates like what you were talking about at the start of the podcast, of just changes amongst the board and within supervision, being able to provide that information.
yeah. Yeah. And I think, again, just like you as a supervisor, your job is not only to teach, but it's also to encourage.
Yes.
Right? And you can't look at a person and say to yourself time and time again, they don't understand this concept, they need to study harder, or they don't understand this, because it's not that simple. Like if we assume good intent and if we're doing good intervention, then any of us would be able to say like there's a barrier here that we need to address as a supervisor so that way they can be like their best self as a clinician.
Oh, yeah. And if you're saying that, I'm thinking of how many experiences I've had in that role where it was the healing part of having another clinician be like, you're good at this. Like, I see all of this potential. Like, you are somebody I would trust. I would send clients to you. You just need to figure this thing out, or you just need to work on this. But you've got all the other stuff. Like, go get it.
Yeah, and like I'm the supervisor that's going to be like, I'm starting to get pissed off at you because you keep doubting yourself.
But
Like, stop it. You're capable, and I think that like personable, that relation focused approach is a very like long lasting, helpful approach. I can't tell you how many, like I literally, one of my friends sent me a message today that her and her coworker, who we all used to work together, literally had a conversation a week ago about like meeting new BCBAs and having a really hard time because their experience with me was so lovely that they have had that expectation of
look
everybody.
out, world, because that's going to be the general experience for you.
Yeah, you're going to get a supervisor you fall in love with and you're probably not going to have him forever and you're going to miss him a lot.
Especially you, Kelsey. That speaks back to what you were talking about earlier of what you look for in a supervisee is somebody that if you don't have anything else, give a shit. Have the heart to do this kind of a work. And if you
Yeah.
have that, you will figure everything else out. You will
Yeah.
figure out the studying and the modalities, and it's the fact that you care enough to challenge yourself, to look at yourself and ask hard questions about what didn't go so well in that session, even though there was a lot that felt really good about it.
Yeah, and I think that part of it is that we have to take it seriously, but I think that there's so much of this imposter syndrome when you're doing this new big thing and you do take it seriously. You know that you can do harm if you don't
Right.
take it seriously. And that's where it's like I think I get a lot of imposter syndrome type people that are like, I'm not book smart. I'm not this, I'm not that. And like for context, I took my only behavior analytic undergrad course that I had access to, I got a C in. Like, I did bad in that class.
Yeah.
Like, I did not understand it. And I went into a program where people were there for 4 years as undergrads studying behavior analysis, right? Like, it's okay to not know, but it's not okay to not care.
Yes.
I can't teach you to
I
care.
can't help you.
In fact, I won't teach you to care. And so that's also where I'm strict. And if we're not showing up prepared, if we're not, taking it seriously, like, I'm not going to be the supervisor for you because I really care. Um, but with that, you're going to get my quirks of like, I want you to study in this way. I'm so sorry. You got to study in this way. Like, stop. I don't want people listening to audio. Like, that's another BACB change, is that you can no longer listen to podcasts and count them as supervision hours. I just think, like, you can receptively hear information and not conceptually understand it.
Yes. Yeah, that's all of that. Right?
Like, again, how are you demonstrating to me that you can label something and describe it and receptively like, you can't do that when you're listening to a podcast. So that was a big shift and a big complaint from people when they changed this criteria.
Part of me that goes, like, obviously the board has to exist. Like, there has to be a body that oversees things and makes sure that the people that are especially doing harm are stopped in some way. But it's like, God help you. If like you are literally trying to control all of that, like how people learn and how they are and if they care and don't. And it's just.
And I think that that's like I have a feeling that this expectation that we can't do role play or everything has to be related to a client, I have a feeling that that's not going to stand forever, because that's the other complaint, is you need to have a supervisor that is staying up to date with all of the changes, because the BACB changes things all the time and they put them in these like newsletters that aren't necessarily like changing like the supervision handbook. And so you might not know that something's changed. And if your BCBA doesn't know that something's changed, and then you're doing supervision hours wrong and you get audited, then like, right? So that's another thing that I would ask of my supervisees, is that like, I won't sign a contract with somebody until I can sit with them and they can explain me what the supervision standards are. Because you have to know that. You have to be responsible for your hour tracking, what counts as what, all of that. And so if you can't explain that to me before you, at least to some extent, right? I don't expect mastery. Like, that's what I'm there for.
Some kind of outline of expectation and that you're both on the same page. I mean, that's why I don't know if you guys we do contracts,
yes.
A supervision contract, which is an outline of all of the above, down to if we cancel on one another or what to do in a crisis or having liability coverage for yourself. Like, everything is included in that contract. So our first session is usually us reviewing that and seeing if there's any questions or things that need to come up. And then how are you hoping that our supervision sessions are like what are you thinking of? And
yeah,
I typically hold them.
Yeah, that's how that's what I would set up a session to look like. So if somebody was starting supervision with me for the first time, not only would the first session be we're reviewing the supervision contract, but it would also be a discussion of like, what are the supervision standards? How do we approach this?
Yes.
But I also really like to, because again, I am taking this like relational approach of understanding. Like, I also send a self-assessment where I have my supervisor on all areas of the task list, which are the things you have to study for the exam. Yeah. You rate yourself of like, this is an area I feel strong in. This is not an area I feel strong in. And it's my responsibility as a supervisor then to, as we're going throughout the supervision process, that we're checking in with that self-assessment, that we're improving our understanding. And if we get 3 months into supervision and you still feel like you don't understand something, then that's a flag to me of like, me as supervisor, I need to do something different.
Maybe haven't been paying enough attention to this or focusing on it in some way.
Yeah. So that's another thing that is tough about supervision, but required, is that there's this reciprocal feedback relationship where I have to give you feedback on your performance, but you also have to hold me accountable as a supervisor as well.
Totally. Yeah. And that's it is such a huge responsibility, and it's maybe one of my favorite aspects of it, especially this far in, where at this point I have not only a few people that have been under me for supervision, but I have a few clients that then chose to go to school and now are therapists themselves in that way. And when you have that, like outside of school, the impression that your supervisor has on you and how you practice, and at least in those beginning, I would say 5 years, it is a huge commitment, relationship, bond,
Yes.
don't take it lightly. Like, find your person, interview people, ask
Yeah.
questions, ask how their sessions are, how they structure it, what they find of value, what their weaknesses and strengths are as a supervisor, all of that.
Yeah. That's all focusing on a therapeutic relationship that has real life skills and value that you can take in all these scenarios, right? Like if you're working with caregivers, can you say, what are your strengths? What do you need from me? Right? Or like when you're working with a school team, like it seems like this went really poorly. What do you think went wrong? Was it me? Like those are all things that you should be practicing with your supervisor because they have real life value. But yeah, I mean, I think at 10 years of doing this is like supervision's to me some of the funnest part.
It's, as you well know, it's a huge reason I went into private practice was because I love working with therapists as clients, and I love supervision for exactly all of these things that we're talking.
You get to be a nerd. You get to be a huge nerd and basically info dump about your special interest.
And you have to experiment and be creative, and then I love it so much.
It's so good. Yeah, it's so good.
And then seeing how that goes, like, years after in that development and where people go as clinicians, it feels like a little blanket that we weave as therapists as we support one another in flourishing and all that we do.
Yeah, and I think that, like, it makes me also curious, knowing that your supervision experience is probably so different from what mine was. It makes me curious what we could take from each other's supervision approach, because I think blending those things and, like, because I love that you labeled it. I think that my approach is more, like, relational in providing supervision. I think it'd be super interesting to kind of take from each other's supervision toolkit.
And there are entire supervision approaches to it. That was actually something that really fascinated me too. This will probably be like the last thing that, like, my school did not have a class on supervision. Like, there was no covering of, hey, what your supervision experience outside of grad school should be like, let alone the fact that there are many approaches to the supervision process.
Yeah, I didn't get that either. Yeah. I didn't have a supervision class in grad school either. And that was, I think, most clinicians walking out of grad school and passing the exam, that's almost always like the biggest aspect they feel uncomfortable with. That is like the thing that I spend the most time talking with student analysts about is supervision, what it should look like, how to approach it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a whole lot of guessing that we have to do as therapists. Which it's like, thank God that we have the supports that we have. And now we, Full Living, has like, I mean, it's grown, right? It's given us a network of therapists, of providers that if we don't know, we can ask.
Exactly. Oh yeah. And you got to put yourself out there. Like, that's where we have our private practice groups where we go in and we say, what are you guys experiencing? What's unique to this? And you have to do that at every level. You have to make friends with your colleagues, make those support networks, have that person you call when you're like, I don't know what just happened in that session, or I don't know if I'm reaching burnout or not. What does that even mean?
Yes. So if all of that being said, if anybody wants to get supervision or wants information on supervision or wants to be a better supervisor, we're good people for that. So you can inquire, you can do like a 15-minute free consultation where we talk about those things. I know we're working on posting things for me and my supervision and my pricing and things like that. So that's TBD on our website.
In growth in that way, which is just so, I mean, obviously Ashley and I, years ago when we started Full Living Wellness, we had no idea that this would kind of be a branch off, and it's been so perfect and organic, and I've just loved it. And I'm so excited to see where this next stage of things grow, and especially just knowing, I mean, people need you. There's just, they need your perspective and your insight and empowerment of allowing clinicians to know that they get to create their own identity around this, and especially one that they know really benefits people.
Yeah. Very powerful work. So yes, we take it seriously, and you should take it seriously too.
Yeah.
So yeah,
this is we're wrapping up this episode, but I do want to note, just because I'm so excited about it, that in the future episodes, I think it'll probably be our next episode, we're going to be touching base on more relationship dynamic stuff. We had asked a couple of weeks ago what are some topics that people want to hear from, and that was basically all of the feedback that we got was like relationship dynamics and dating advice. And so we're gonna get back on that, and this time we're going to do it in a really fun way that we haven't done before by involving like some movie clips and especially reality TV, and talking about really good examples of relationships and some not good examples.
Some not great examples, which you guys know I love my reality TV. So we're blending interests here. But yeah, that's that. We're wrapping it up. This is Friends Living Well. If you want supervision, again, hit us up, fulllivingwellness.com.
Yes.
Yeah, and we'll see you next time with some reality TV.
We will see you guys next time. All information will be linked below. And as always, stay safe, stay good. We'll see you soon.
All right.
Peace.